What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Out Fast Realty Podcast. And for today, we have a lot of good stuff for you as usual. As a reminder, there's no guru talk, no BS, no fluff. We're going to talk real estate knowledge here, guys. And today we're going to talk about what really makes a good real estate investment deal. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because as a true buyer and that has bought several properties and also has wholesaled a lot of properties in my career, I can't tell you how many times every single day I get an email from some wannabe wholesaler, wannabe investor that's sending me a deal, and then they have never done a deal in their life, or if they have, they've got some sucker buyers buying these deals because they just don't make sense. And I've talked about this on my old podcast, Flipping Real Estate Like the Pros, and I've talked about this at TB RIA, and I've talked about this on some of our Whiteboard Wednesday stuff. So this content is all out there for you guys to find anyway.
You're doing Whiteboard Wednesdays now?
Absolutely.
I love that.
So, and one thing I think the biggest reason we have bad deals sent to us is, I think the big thing is that people are just too afraid to make those quote unquote lowball offers. When I started in this business, not about you guys, I was told if you aren't embarrassed by your initial offer, it's not low enough.
That's tough. People don't like to be embarrassed.
No, right? But I mean,
they don't want to rub people the wrong way. But you're right.
Yeah, because you know, owning a brokerage, this is this fine line because we have real estate agents that have probably gotten those lowball offers on some of their listings that might be some fixer-uppers. And Jeremy, I'm sure you've gotten some too. But the thing is, like, we've got to make money. We're going to put up the $100,000, $200,000 in purchase price and another $50,000, $60,000 in a rehab. Like, we're not going to do this for fun.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is they're scared to walk the people through like what's happening. Like this is what we're looking at. This is what the property's worth, and they're scared to tell them, hey, we're going to make $30,000, but it's going to take us 6 months, and really break it down for them. And I think that's part of the problem is they're scared to make that offer because they're not helping the client or the person understand where they're coming from and their angle and the type of effort that comes into it, and it breaks it down. Okay, it should be worth $200,000, but we're going to offer you $50,000, and this is why. And it starts to make concrete sense to them, and I think they would convert better if they were willing to do that.
Yeah, it's about being transparent with the seller because you have to educate them. And a lot of these sellers that we deal with that are even willing to consider taking that lowball cash offer, they need to be educated for the most part. You're not going to get a sophisticated investor who owns multiple properties taking discounts for their properties. It's one of those things that you have to be. Like what I like to do for us, at least when I'm negotiating with the sellers, I will actually walk them through my exact rehab numbers. One of the last deals I did.
Hollyberry was a good example.
Yeah, exactly. So Hollyberry is a great example. We were in competition with Homevestors for that deal because between us, but we sat down with him in the kitchen. There was no kitchen table, so we don't get to use that thing. But we actually sat in the kitchen with the seller and said, look, we're going to have to do this. And it's going to cost this much. And then we got to do this, and it's going to cost this much, and broke it down into the point where basically we were at the same price as Homevestors for the offer. Like our offers were within, maybe 5% of each other. But because Jeremy and I sat there and explained the whole process line by line with him, he took our offer. And I think we might have even been a little bit lower than then. But because we sat there and explained the whole process and why we needed to get our contractors through and why we needed to get all these ducks in a row, it made us look more professional. And we also bring a credibility kit with us. It explains the process in, like line by line order. And it also says, or has a whole bunch of our seller testimonials from the people we've done in the past and we've gotten them from. So there's an aspect of buying houses off market correctly and being professional about it. And I think that's another thing that's a bigger problem is that people aren't willing to invest the time, energy, and money into the marketing aspect or the educational aspect with the sellers. One thing I want to add to that, though, is that's why we have a brokerage, because there's always going to be that aspect or that, I guess you'd say, it's that persona of professionalism. Realtors have a license. They have something to protect. They have something that they have gone out there. They've spent a lot of money to get the class taken, the fingerprints, joining GTAR or Pro or whatever real estate, what do you call it? Sorry, blanking.
As far as what goes, but
realtor organization.
Oh,
they got to pay their dues. They've got to do their, they've got to go through so many steps where they have it's not the highest barrier of entry, but like a wholesaler can just go take a 1 weekend course and all of a sudden they're an investor. Bullshit.
Exactly.
No way.
And when you're tossing out, I mean, kind of the name of the game with that to a certain extent too is, throw your line out in the ocean 100 times, and you'll catch something.
Yeah.
Right. So I can definitely see why a lot of them end up in that. But when you get somebody who is interested, you don't know that, and you just threw them a number, and that's it.
All right.
Then,
Well, Jeremy, take someone that's listening through the process of you going out to their house. Like, what, as a real estate agent, as someone that's understands this side of the business too, explain to our listeners, the people watching, what exactly you're educating your seller on, whether they're a fast cash seller or if they're just a regular seller. Like, explain to the process a little bit.
Yeah, so it all starts with trying to qualify them as much as possible over the phone, and having a conversation about what's their goal, what's their why, what situation are they going through that they need to sell or do something with the property. They may think they just have to sell, but they may also be interested in turning it into a rental property. We've had some conversations with sellers, or maybe even doing a seller financing deal to us. Or maybe we've had one or two where we actually helped them rehab the property so they could sell it for more, and we went through that thing with them as well. So it's kind of understanding what's the real reason you need to sell. Do you need the cash for some reason? Do you need a 1031? Just kind of like analyzing, at least thinking through these things to see what kind of angle you want to take, or what would help them the most. So I try to get an idea of what the property or multiple properties that they're looking to move. And I start running my numbers, run some rents and some comp analysis, and kind of see what's going on in the market, and if it's a place that we're already familiar with. A lot of times, we've been in the community or the street before with a property pretty similar, or we can, just through experience, you begin to understand maybe the general market area, probably the price point, price per square foot, or at least some of the rehab stuff that's going on. So when I get to the property, it's a lot of the hard work's done up front. We try to add that credibility, send stuff ahead of time that they can review. They can look over the paperwork ahead of time. So when we go there, we're not trying to walk through this, this multiple page contract. They've had time to review it if they choose to. Right. And I think that works well because you're also operating with different types of personalities. Right. And some people just want to get straight to like, what are you going to offer? And some are, you have to massage a little bit, or they want to understand the process. And so going there, analyzing the property, taking a look at it, and through experience, really starting to understand the rehab numbers and how you're coming up with these prices and how you're breaking that down and backing that out from the ARV or the comps that you found. And then also there may be stuff that we're doing internally within the company that we're able to identify maybe a deal that our agent bought that they're rehabbing, and they've even got some offers that never hit the MLS yet, where we're able to see, or even rents that we're filling on the property management side, where we're able to say, okay, well, comps are this, but we actually have moved a couple of items that haven't shown up yet or were done off market that actually gives us some extra knowledge that we may want to put into the overall kind of picture when we're talking with the seller. And it's usually a pretty quick process of, once you've done it a couple of times, just get on the internet. Within 10 minutes, we kind of know what we need to know. You go out to the appointment. And the one I went to just a couple of weeks ago was a referral from a state attorney, and we were really close on the numbers, but I was there probably less than 10, 15 minutes, but I just kind of educated them, like, look, you could probably list it for this, or you can do cash for this, and she didn't want to have rental property, so that's fine, but it's at least kind of figuring that out and trying to sort through some of the questions.
Let's keep going a little bit deeper. So part of the thing is like, what if a seller decides to sell their property, whether it's a wholesale transaction where, again, cash and quick close, or a traditional thing, what steps are they taking though? I mean, let's talk about like, what's that first step? They sign a listing agreement with us over at Out Fast. What expectations are you setting with them to understand what the next steps are? So like, as in like appraisals and inspections and stuff like that, how does that all come about?
Yeah, so if they decide they want to go ahead and list the property, some of the stuff is covered up front in the conversation and back through just the email or like a pre-listing presentation that we send them is really going to outline. That's actually where it outlines the whole process from like pre-sale, all right, house is on the market, now house is under contract, and as you go towards the closing table, it kind of outlines all the different things that we do that sets us apart, makes us different. But yeah, it starts with signing the listing agreement. You got to get the property ready to show. If it's tenant occupied, that adds a whole different dynamic to it. Sure. If it's vacant, it's a lot easier to show and get things done, schedule the photos and get the marketing together. And so you kind of have these, it's ideal that you would have at least like a 2-week push before it goes live to really get the marketing going and start running ads and that sort of thing. and then schedule open houses and kind of go through that process. But yeah, it's all covered up front on this is kind of what we're running into. This is going to be the once we get into executed contract, this is typical inspection period. If they're doing a loan, this is probably the typical loan timeframes that we see, 30, 45 days. And, estimate of closing costs. So you got closing costs, the buyer has it, like this is what you're going to net.
Commissions, all that good stuff.
All that stuff is covered. And then, usually they ask what we charge, and, we try to make a couple bucks here.
Let me ask you guys this. So people are listening. Last week we were filming with the guys from the Teal. What was it called?
Teal Door.
Teal Door
Hosting.
Teal Door hosting with the Airbnb model. What was your guys' takeaway from that after last week?
It's so fascinating. I just love that stuff, man. And if we find properties, man, we actually made an offer on that when we walked. Actually,
really?
I think the problem with that one was we talked about when we were there, is that the seller overpaid for the renovation and didn't get what they paid for. So unfortunately, I don't think they're gonna be able to take the offer that we need to be at, because we know we're gonna have to put either another $20,000 into that house to make it to where an Airbnb makes sense. But they've dropped that price like $60,000 in like a few months. I think it started listed at $250 and it's down to like $190.
What were some of the no-nos in that house?
Well,
that
they
you guys
just
saw?
the foundation was an issue. They fixed it in certain areas. They didn't fix it in others. But they didn't open up the kitchen. They didn't put enough lighting in the kitchen. They didn't put all the floor vent was brutal.
Spongy one.
Yeah. They had carpet in places that they had a.
How about the light switch and the baseboards? I like.
That was pretty awesome too.
I think that whoever was the project manager or managed the project had probably never done one before, because you wouldn't let your client just make some of those decisions. Like,
well, that's the thing is that realtor. I don't know who it was. I'm not going to bash that realtor, but I don't think that realtor had any experience in investing either. Because if that realtor brought that buyer into that deal, I'm assuming. Right. Because usually when it's an out-of-state investor like that, they're usually dealing with the agent to help buy that property and then relist it on the back end. That agent did them no favors on helping manage that property, because that agent should have been like, no, that can't happen for us to sell for top dollar.
They might have been.
Well, if they didn't know what they're doing, is what I'm saying. They did a disservice to their client one way or the other, whether it was on the acquisition or managing the rehab, or telling that seller that they should be able to get $260 for that crappy rehabbed house. And that's just not fair. So that's the part we're talking about here, is that there's so much that goes into just getting a listing done. You talked about like pre-qualifying the seller, getting them understanding expectations, understanding the process, and then it takes 2 weeks just to get it to market. Well, if I'm meeting with the seller and I've made them a cash offer and it makes sense for them to do it at the number I need to be at, we've already closed by the time he gets it listed on the MLS, or one of our agents or another agent gets it on the MLS. So that's the big difference, is by buying cash, we're done in 2 weeks, as long as it lines up title-wise, is clear, and all that good jazz. But, if it's something that you do need to close quickly, we can't buy it at the retail price that Jeremy or another agent like Brittany would list it for. So there's a huge difference in the process between the two, and that's why we have to buy it for what we have to buy it for too. Because if we make mistakes, we are moving at light speed here. We're getting people out fast, literally. We might miss a few things here and there, but we have to make sure we CYA, because we don't want to lose our money, our investors' money, or have it take too long because we underestimated the rehab grossly. Man, that doesn't usually happen, but it has happened.
One video we made of you critiquing all the stuff in there. Did you see that in that folder? It's like a little.
Oh, I haven't watched it all yet. No.
50-second montage of your critiques of the stuff.
Oh shit, I haven't seen it.
It's
I gotta go watch it then.
Should have sent that with the offer.
That would have been sick.
I think one thing too is, like, when you start understanding this stuff a bit more, when you're talking with the homeowner, you can educate them on the repair costs. And I think if you're doing a listing, for example, a lot of agents don't know what it takes to fix something up. So when you're coming, okay, well, these are the comps, but they're they're in a better shape. So this is kind of the adjustment that needs to be made.
Better shape, better size, or bigger size, or smaller.
And they always shoot low
one.
too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's kind of I've learned that lesson, not so much with the real estate, but with other things. When you're forecasting expenses, don't go low so somebody that likes what you're saying, because ultimately you're just going to end up disappointing them, right?
Right. And that's the thing, is like I'll bring it up here finally. in a public forum, I'm sick and tired of these wholesalers out there giving these sellers haircuts. Yeah. Everybody looks at me and goes, what the hell's a haircut? And here's what a haircut is. So these supposed investors walk into this person's house. They offer them $80,000 for this house. Well, I come in behind that investor, and I'm the one that's going to actually be the end buyer. And I go, well, I need to buy the house for $85,000, or I need to buy it for $80,000, whatever. Right. And then they're like, okay, we can make that happen. And then I come to find out that they went back to the seller and negotiated a $20,000 price reduction with that seller. That, in my opinion, is really bad business. When that stuff starts happening, that's what gives the real guys, and there's lots of really good We Buy Houses companies out there. Right. And they do the service right by the sellers.
Well, yeah.
But
it only takes a few to screw it up.
Yeah, but the problem is those guys make it so that way we don't get that business because they've been told by Joe Blow wholesaler that they can offer them $100,000 for the same house that I know I need to be at 80 at because I know my numbers. So we lose out on more wholesale transactions than we do because we're realistic with the seller. We're telling them up front, hey, we'll be at 80. Instead, these wholesalers are telling them 80 and they're just trying to sell it for 90 or 100 and they're having to come back and then really give that seller a haircut. Because here's what happens. It's just like a psychological thing, and I teach this in our wholesale class. You've got to know your numbers right because what happens is when that seller signs that contract, whether it's even a contract for us to buy it or a listing agreement, if Jeremy says he's going to list the house for $200,000, guess what they've already done? They've cashed that effing check.
Right.
They've already, in their mind, gone, I'm getting $200,000 minus commissions and stuff. Mm-hmm. Or if Greg's buying the house for $80,000, they're walking away with $80,000 in the bank.
Right.
And if you have to come back to them and say, oh, man, I need to be at 60.
Yeah.
They just literally felt like they got $20,000 stolen from them.
Yeah.
And so, that's the problem that is the bigger thing that I see with the wholesaling business is that there's too many people not knowing their numbers. And they're out there ruining it for the guys that really do. And that's been like one of my missions with TB RIA and with Out Fast is to educate the general public as best as I can. Now, the general public listens to what they want to listen to.
Right.
But we're going to tell them the truth.
Right.
We're going to be transparent and authentic with them and tell them this is how it works, this is the numbers, and we're not going to have to renege on it. Now, granted, there are times we miss things, but I'm not going back to seller and saying I need 20 grand or 15 grand off. I've had to go back and ask for 10.
By 40%. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a big problem. I was off by, I'll never forget, it was actually in Old Seminole Heights. They did a deal and I was off on my rehab by 10 grand.
Right.
So I did have to go back and ask for a $10,000 price reduction, but we're talking in a $200,000 house, the rehab of about $40,000. That's not that far off, and we were able to come to an agreement because I missed something during our inspection period, and that's why we have inspection periods to get our contractors out there to make sure we're doing our numbers right. And when we came back, I forget exactly what it was. I think there was an issue with the roof that was going to cost about 10 grand, so we came back and had to get the 10 grand off. But that's like literally in all of the wholesale deals that I've done. It's one of the few that I've ever had to go back and ask for something so big. Usually, I'll just eat that out of. Right. So we have if I'm off by like $3 grand, not messing with that offer with that seller, not messing with it. It's good enough. Let's go.
Yeah. The Florida Home Show was pretty impressive.
Yeah,
you guys would have liked that.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of those, and they are pretty impressive.
Yeah.
The problem with those is that we can't usually find too many of those guys that are willing to work with investors at the prices we need for some of the stuff. But they're out there. I mean, they're there. Yeah. I've met a couple good guys out there.
Yep. The way I look at that, as long as you come out of there and like 10% of the vendors were good partners in some fashion, form, or whatever, 5-10%.
Yeah,
that's cool. Handful of companies that you can do something with.
You can always find those hungry companies that are looking for more work because as someone who has been in the service-based business in the past, and you got employees, man, you got to keep them busy or they're going to go find work elsewhere. Yep. And so sometimes you'll find those guys that just need to keep their guys busy on certain small projects for stuff that we need them for. So, it's always a plus to have some of those guys in your back pocket, but it's rare at a home show. If you guys are looking to renovate your house for the retail market, great place for you guys to go meet potential contractors and subcontractors to do work on your house. But if you're an investor, home shows are not the best to find those types of contractors.
No. There was a couple of them there. Mm-hmm. There was a couple of them.
Yeah,
there
for sure.
One guy that was I can't remember what he had. He had some kind of a handyman business, but he was familiar with TB Ria and knew you guys and whatnot. So,
I mean, you're not going to find general contractors there by any means. You're never going to find a good GC there. I mean, they might be good GCs, but not for investors. And, they want to mark up 20% on the materials and the labor and then do another 20% for their overhead. And I get that they have a lot of overhead. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
We've looked into the business.
Yeah. It's a different model. You know what I mean?
It's different because, we're doing rehabs for $30,000, $40,000. They're doing kitchens for $30,000, $40,000 and up. I have a good buddy of mine, Jason Avery, who hopefully we can get on the show here soon.
Okay.
He does $100,000 kitchens in South Tampa. Like those are
What's
more.
the name of his company?
Avery Construction.
Avery Construction.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Cool.
And I've known him for a long time. He actually introduced me to my first ever private lender.
Okay.
And so that's really how I got my foot in the door was with him. And he knew right out of the gate that he couldn't help me on the project, but he was gracious enough to introduce me to Rob.
Right.
And not that Rob, different Rob. So you never know who you're going to meet at those things. You're going to build relationships with. So just because they can't work for you doesn't mean you can't work with them and build a powerful relationship with them.
The guys with the gutter guard, sir, the gutter guards?
No, I haven't.
So they have. There was a couple of companies there.
It's like a mesh that goes over the gutter so it doesn't get stuck.
Gutters, blah blah blah. But they both had the same thing. It was a little
Out Fast Realty Podcast sponsored by Gutter Guard.
Right? And it was like a roof. It was like a section of a roof with the gutter and the gutter guard, and they had the water constantly going down it. So it was actually kind of innovative as far as a trade show display. And obviously, I'm always interested, when I see things.
That's like something you see on Shark Tank.
Right? Yeah, it was pretty neat, man. I was like, wow, this is neat. So those guys were there was a couple of them. They both did the same thing. So, but I always look at that and I go, God, why don't more people that are displaying here? I mean, some of the people displaying there was.
They could use your services?
Yeah, there was one company who I will not name that is a monster, nationally monster. And they had a backdrop and 5 guys standing there.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no table, no nothing there. And I was like, what's up, guys? They're like, hanging out.
I'm just paid to stand here.
Yeah, and I was like, so where's the rest of them? They're like, this is
it. You guys are
That's like they have to take some big brass, that's all they need.
Yeah.
And they probably are killed it at the show too.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I don't think that's what was going on from the looks of it. No,
Yeah.
Of course, I was there Sunday afternoon, a 3-day trade show.
Yeah.
By the time you get to Sunday,
Did you see anything that would be like an interesting spin for an investor to understand from meeting one of those companies, whether it's like a rental property or a flip, like any new kind of technology or anything that you saw that would help lower costs over time?
Not really too much. I think there's something to be said for whenever you're trying to do something, you have to find a way to cut through the noise. And, I definitely talked to a handful of different vendors there that had smaller, unique things about them. Like one guy who specialized in the solar powered water heaters.
Okay.
And it was super cheap. And he's like, we can put that in, blah blah blah, for free. It's like $30 a month after that, and that would give like the house the solar niche almost or something. You know what I mean? So like there was a lot of different companies there. They had little things you can add on that I could see how a certain segment of the buying market may, when you come to time to do the open house or advertise it or whatnot, may pique their interest.
Yeah.
In order to help cut through it. But yeah, for the most part, I mean the investment world versus the high end,
the retail side,
the retail side of things. Those are two different worlds. You know what I mean? I think that it might be useful for people in the investment side just to go and look at stuff for ideas and whatnot. But
one thing I thought for sure was going to be a smash, right? For me flipping a couple houses in St. Pete. I swear to God, this was going to be the biggest wave of the future type thing. And I thought by installing this in this house or in these houses was going to be brilliant, and I was going to like separate myself from the rest of the competition. It was home automation. I thought for sure with all the way of the future with Amazon, Alexa smart and Siri and all the smart home nonsense, right? Frickin' total flop. No one gave a shit. No one wanted it. No one wanted to pay the premium. It wasn't even like a premium. I was including it in the full price offer. I didn't mark up the house that much.
Nobody even blinked an eye at it.
Nobody even cared. And I was like, I was dead set. People are gonna love this because you can open up the freaking. You can turn the AC on. You could unlock the door for UPS or any. And they had the cameras everywhere. I was like, this is a no-brainer because I want it in my house.
I can see Greg pitching this to everybody as they're walking in and they're just blowing right past it.
What a flop!
I should disable it.
Total flop. So just as a point of reference, like most of the buying pool doesn't care.
Right.
They're going to install that stuff on their own. They're going to want to use their brand maybe because I think they didn't recognize the brand.
Right.
It didn't matter. It was the same technology. You could have the Nest. It had the Nest thermometer and all that other stuff, and it was the same stuff. They just didn't recognize the name of the company. So I don't know if that was it or not, but I only did it on a small scale. It's like I'm not spending this money anymore on that stuff, and I had to eat it. So it really sucked. So if you're an investor, don't get caught up on some of that newer technology. But as you're a homeowner and you want that stuff's badass. Like I personally think it does add a lot of value to your house if it's coming permanently affixed to
How
it.
long
Like
ago
the
was
solar.
this that you did that?
About a year and a half ago.
Oh, so it was fairly recent.
Yeah, it was the last house I tried that on was January. We sold it in January of last year.
Okay.
So it was 2017 the rehab happened, but early 2018 we sold it and it didn't.
God, I would have
flopped.
I would have loved to have watched that.
Dude, I did a Facebook Live. Dude, it's so crazy. I did a Facebook Live with the first house I did it on, and I was like, this is amazing. Watch what I can do from my phone. I can do all this cool stuff. And everybody else was like, that's the coolest shit ever.
Right.
And then come to find out when it actually hit the market, nobody gave a crap.
Nobody cares.
I don't know if the realtors didn't know how to sell it or what the situation was, but
could probably
it could have
be
been,
your
but
leading
it
cause
was
there.
crazy because it's all the rage right now. And that was,
Right.
again, that was maybe before Echoes even were a thing yet. I don't know what happened. I mean, I was just maybe ahead of my time,
It's
but
early adapters that are the ones that are getting excited.
yeah,
about
and they also
it,
get
you know?
murdered in the marketplace
Yeah,
until
that's
it,
true.
makes it mainstream. So I don't know. That's my tidbit.
One thing,
So
one piece of tech that we've seen like on
sucks.
the like the property management side is, instead of having to rekey houses, it's still tech based, but it's, combination locks. It's just keypad, and you don't even need a key anymore. You can set it for different code for different people. But we've seen companies come out with little combinations of packages where you get the lock, you get the thermostat that comes with it. So the overall idea is adding a little bit of, coolness to your property, but from the owner's standpoint, helping to, if they can monitor the AC a little bit better, it saves their AC, it saves their cost. So it's some of those things where
Definitely.
there's a play from both parties. But
That was a huge takeaway I got from Teal Door is that they had all their houses have the keypad on the door. So every time they have a new tenant, that keypad automatically changes locks. So like if their lockbox code or whatever on the front of the door changes every new tenant, so you can't come back 6 months later, get in. They have all the cameras set up, which I think is absolutely amazing for someone that may be investing in Airbnbs here in Tampa Bay from afar. And I'm excited to have them eventually go national because their model is fantastic.
Well, that's always been.
So that was crazy.
I like that though, with the lockbox changing like that. I mean, even if you're just in the rental game, and you've got people coming in and out of there and all that. I mean, that's. Yeah,
we definitely need to have him come in on the podcast because he tells the story. And we had this meeting with him about a year ago, and he told us that they were pretty sure they were like somebody was dealing drugs out of the house or they were throwing a party or something like that, and they literally cranked the AC in the house all the way up to like 90 degrees in the summertime until they did. I forget. I want to have Jared come and tell the whole story.
I think it was a noise.
They sweat them out.
They sweat them out. They sweat them out and said we're not because they couldn't touch the AC because they can control it from their phone on the Nest, and they overrode it so that the tenant could not be comfortable in the house until they did whatever they asked them to do. And I want him to come in and tell that story because I know I butchered it, but man, that's so awesome.
Gas.
So yeah, there's all sorts of cool shit that they have, and it's fascinating. What things you can use as management. So that's a great point. And now they even have the keys where if you don't do that, you even have like the master keys. Like you can just like go and like turn it, and now that lock fits that key. It's
Right.
I still don't know how that works, but it's pretty cool. I know those locks are a little bit more expensive, but that's a good thing for
I
rehabbers.
still don't know how to key a traditional lock. Some of the guys I work with can do that and make them all match, and I can't.
Yeah, I can't do the Dexter. So don't forget, guys, if you've had a good time on this podcast today, make sure you subscribe, you rate us, review us on iTunes and Stitcher and any of those other forms. Make sure you comment on YouTube, subscribe, and because, guys, we need your help. This podcast does not get out to the masses, does not help our colleagues, our potential clients, our potential referral partners if you don't help us. So we need your help. Please make sure that you rate us, review us, and give us all 5 stars if you thought today's content was amazing. And we'll catch you guys on the flip side.